Hey friend, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to show you one easy step for a way better vocal reverb mix. I'm going to start by playing you the mix here, and I'll play you the vocal dry before we start blending in this reverb and tweaking it to get it sitting right in the track. So here's our mix for this song with a dry vocal.
With the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme, but I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending to break up our scene in this way, but there ain't any use in pretending it could happen to us any day.
So you can hear we've got the vocal sounding the way we want it, tone-wise, volume-wise. It's sitting right inside the track. Now we just want to add some depth to it. I got a bunch of effect sends set up over here that are standard in my template. We're going to focus in on the reverb today. So I'm going to come here in my sends for the lead vocal, and I'm going to turn on the send for the lexicon plate here. This is just an impulse response of the A plate in the Lexicon 480 reverb. It is a 2-second plate reverb, and we're going to dial this up inside the track to get it sitting where we want it against the vocal, and then we're going to make one change to it. So all we're doing here, we've turned on our reverb for the vocal, and we're going to blend it in to give our vocal some depth.
With the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme, but I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending to break up our scene in this way, but there ain't any use in pretending. Who's with the fancy persuasion? Don't admit that it's part of a scheme, but I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending to break up our scene in this way.
So I've got the reverb dialed up here volume-wise so you can start to hear the tail a little bit inside the track. I soloed up so you can hear how the reverb is blending with our vocal. About a 2-second plate gives it enough length on the back end that it's kind of filling in the gaps between the vocal, but it's not too long that it's blending into our next vocal phrase here. And the length of the reverb is something you can tweak to fit your vocal. If there's larger gaps between phrases, you can always lengthen the reverb, but if it's a very fast vocal, you can always shorten it as well. Now there is one issue that I have with just pulling up a reverb like this. I want you to take a listen to the soloed vocal with the reverb going.
With the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme, but I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending.
When we dial the verb up to get the depth we want on the vocal, it starts to muddy up our lead vocal. And we've already dialed in the tone and the volume, the frequency response that we want on the lead vocal. I don't want to ruin that with the reverb and then have to go back to our lead vocal and tweak the EQ there to try and, thin it out more. What we're going to do to fix this so our reverb doesn't cloudy up our lead vocal or muddy up our lead vocal is we're going to delay our reverb so it's not happening right on top of our vocal. We're going to hear our vocal and then we'll hear our reverb. So it's going to be even more of a tail than it already is. The way we're going to do that is we're going to come to our reverb and we're going to add some pre-delay. Now, if you're using a reverb that doesn't have any pre-delay on it, you can always stick a delay plugin afterwards, or you can actually run it into the reverb. So your vocal hits your reverb however many milliseconds later. What I like to do is I like to use about 150 millisecond pre-delay. So I'm going to dial up the pre-delay knob on the open air reverb to about 150 here. 151.5 is fine. And this is going to give us a little bit of gap between when our vocal starts and when the reverb starts. That way our reverb isn't sitting right on top of our vocal, competing for space. Our vocal is going to have its own area to shine and to breathe inside the track, and then our reverb will come in to give us the tail and depth we want behind our lead vocal. So now take a listen here to just our vocal with the reverb. You can hear there's a little bit more space and a little bit more room for our vocal to sit before the reverb comes in.
With the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme. But I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending.
It's almost like we're emphasizing the attack on our vocal, because we hear our vocal and then a few milliseconds later, 150 milliseconds later, we hear our reverb. So it's not something that's drastically pushing out our reverb or drastically lengthening our reverb. It just gives us this little gap so we hear our vocal and then we hear our reverb. But you can hear it pushes our reverb out enough that you actually hear a nicer tail on the back end. So let's throw the vocal back inside the track here and we'll dial up the reverb even further.
With the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme. But I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending to break up our scene in this way.
It has a nice way of softening our vocal because we hear our dry vocal and then our reverb kind of slides in behind it and lengthens the end of our vocal. So we hear that nice tail on the reverb and it gives it a softer return, which is nice. We get the nice upfront lead vocal without the reverb muddying it up or cloudying up the space, and then our reverb comes in behind it to give us a smooth return. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to A-B the pre-delay here. So I'll let you hear the pre-delay, and then I'll turn it back on, I'll turn it back off, and we'll just A-B between them. So here's with the pre-delay, and then I'll turn it off. First, I'll solo up the vocal so you can hear it by itself, and then I'll do it inside the track as well.
With the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme. But I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending to break up our scene in this way. But there ain't any use in pretending. It could happen to us any day.
You can hear it actually makes the reverb feel more prominent on the vocal because it's not competing for the same space as the vocal. There's this little bit of separation, a little bit of a gap between our lead vocal and our reverb, so our reverb becomes more audible and it becomes more prominent. So when you put the pre-delay on, you actually have room to dial your reverb back because you're not pulling it up so much to try and hear that tail, to try and hear that depth it's adding, and it's competing with the same space as your vocal, right? So instead of hearing this nice depth and length you're getting from your reverb, you're hearing it cloudy up your vocal. You add this pre-delay, and suddenly they're not competing for the same spot in the track. There's a little bit of separation, and it actually gives your reverb more room to bloom inside the track here. So I'm going to throw it back inside the mix, and I'll do the same thing one more time. I'll A-B our pre-delay here.
With the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme. But I can't help but have my suspicions, 'cause I ain't quite as dumb as I seem. And you said you was never intending to break up our scene in this way. But there ain't any use in pretending. It could happen to us any day. Comes with the fancy persuasion, don't admit that it's part of a scheme. But I can't help but have my suspicion.
So one easy way you can get a better reverb mix on your vocal is by adding a pre-delay. So we're sending from our lead vocal into our plate reverb here. It's about a 2-second plate reverb, and then we're adding a 150 millisecond pre-delay. So our reverb isn't happening right on top of our vocal. It's not adding muddiness. It's not cloudying up our lead vocal. There's a 150 millisecond gap between when our vocal starts and when the reverb starts. It actually emphasizes the tail on our reverb and gets us more clarity inside the mix. I hope that was helpful for you. If you are looking to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety, and you really want to start to hone your workflow as an audio engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF guide that will walk you through the entire mixing process step by step to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the guesswork. Like I said, completely free for you to download, and you can get access to that by clicking the link below in the video description. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.